Have you ever stopped to think about how much money you might need for your lifetime? Is that even possible to calculate? Well, it actually is, and it's one of the most important factors when it comes to lifestyle design. We're going to be talking all about it on today's show. You're listening to episode 14 of
The Gold Mine Podcast.
As women, we have to invest that time in getting to understand who we are.
Be ambitious, be bold, create the life of your dreams. This is the Gold Mine Podcast with your host, Adrian Dion.
What's up, you guys? Happy Tuesday. I hope everyone is having a fantastic day today. As always, I am so happy to be back on here talking to you guys. I live in the podcast world. Like, I listen to podcasts way more than I watch TV or listen to the radio or anything. And I came across a quite interesting statistics. It said that of all the people who start podcasts, most people don't go past episode 7. And I just want to say we're at episode 14. We're double that. So I think we're in for the long run. What do you guys think? I know it's kind of early to be putting that out there, but I'm just going to put it out there anyway. We're in it for the win. With that being said, if you have not already rated or reviewed this podcast, do so ASAP. It helps with the exposure so that more people can hear what's going on in our little community. Oh, yeah. And if you haven't already signed up to join the tribe, also do so. We're going to be doing some great things outside of the podcast, and I want you to be a part of it. All right, enough of that. Let's jump into the show. Last week, we talked about the money mindset and getting rid of those limiting beliefs so that you can align yourself to allow abundance to come in. We have to get rid of those limiting beliefs that we've been taught, throughout our life, and take on some new beliefs, practice beliefs that will serve us best. And so I hope that you guys have become a little bit more aware of those limiting beliefs in the past week. You can identify when they come up and that you are challenging them. That you're saying, no, I'm not going to believe like this. This is not how I want to have a relationship with money. And so I am consciously changing that in my mind first, and everything else will follow. So this week we're going to be talking about how much money you really need. A lot of us may think that we need to be millionaires to be happy, but that's not always true. It pretty much depends on what you want to do in life. What's your primary aim? And so when we start to talk about how much money we need, it really starts with our primary aim. In my coaching program, that is one of the first things I do with my clients. We have to figure out, we've been given this great opportunity to live life. What are you going to do with it? What do you want to do with it? I know a lot of us get hung up on the what's my purpose thing, but I honestly believe that we are co-creators with our creator. And so we should be doing whatever we want to do. We are already designed with purpose inside of us. And so you have to pay attention to the things that you want to do. What drives you? What are your passions? What are your interests? We've already have purpose on the inside of us. So we should be doing the things that we want to do, not necessarily looking for some big, this is my purpose. No, I don't believe that it works like that. So when we start to pay attention to our heart and the interests that we have, it all kind of, pieces the puzzle together. And when you follow those things, you'll in turn be living your purpose. So I think it's very important for us to realize our primary aim in life. What are the things that we want to do? Now, I actually have a worksheet that kind of have a list of questions for figuring out your primary aim. But for our purposes today, there are 2 questions that I think are very important. But before we get into that, I feel like I jumped a lot. I got excited and jumped ahead. Let me go back. I asked the question at the beginning of this episode, and that was, have you ever thought about how much money you'll need for your lifetime? And basically what I mean by that is, what is your ultimate financial goal? Is that even possible to calculate? Well, it actually is. And of course, your needs will change over time, but it's definitely possible. It's basically, I feel, imperative to be aware of this goal, because just like any other goal, without it, you'll be kind of like that, ship out at sail, just out there. You have no destination or anywhere to go. You're just basically kind of letting things come and go as they please, and you already know that's not going to work. And so for a lot of people, you can see this in their day-to-day lives, basically because they go to work, they're paying bills, they're hoping they get an extra amount here or there so they can go on a trip or two. They're planning for this day in the where they'll be able to draw a check and not work. Life begins, basically with retirement. And they're somewhere wishing and hoping and praying that they are lucky enough to win the lottery. That isn't a great way of living life. And if you were to examine the life of the wealthy or of the rich, I can assure you that they just didn't luck up. They aren't living their life throwing pennies at a wishing well. They have goals and they have a plan to reach them. And so that's why I said it's imperative, I believe, that we set financial goals, because all goals require structure if they're intended to be achieved. And when it comes to our finances, there are no exceptions. And so back to our primary aim, I believe that's where we start. Now, a primary aim is basically a specific result a person or a system aims to achieve within a time frame. You often see it with businesses, but I believe, like I said, it's imperative that each of us have it for our lives. It serves as a gauge for how well you're doing in regards to achieving what you want to accomplish in life. Without it, many of us will feel like that hamster on a wheel, just going and going, not having enough, not feeling like you're doing enough, not having that fulfillment that we'll need, because we have no idea of how soon we're going to get to where we're trying to go, or even if we'll ever get to where we're trying to go. So going back to those 2 questions that I was talking about for our purposes today, I believe that you first need to answer the question of what type of life do you want? And the second, what do you want your life to look like on a day-to-day basis? Now, the answers to those questions will be different for basically everyone. And therefore, the amount of money one might need versus the other will be different because of the answers to those questions. I remember talking to this guy back in the day. We were like, initially, like, how you start talking to someone, you're on the phone and you're talking about like the future and what you want to do in life. And I remember telling him like about all the things, all the places I wanted to go and all the things I wanted to do, the businesses. And I'll never forget him telling me, you just want to do too much. Like, why? Why do you want to do all of that? I just want to have a stable job, have a nice house, and just be around my family and friends. And for him, that painted a picture of a great life to him. For me, that was like torture. And so for him to be able to have that stable job, for him to, depending on what type of house that he wanted to have, and to be able to take care of that house, the amount of money that he would need for his lifetime was totally different for what I wanted. So as you can see, many of us never really actually think about this, and therefore you never plan for it. So you really don't know how much you might need. but it makes all the difference in knowing the answer to those two questions. My day-to-day, what I want my life to look like on a day-to-day basis, doesn't include a 9 to 5 because I'll need the freedom of my time to be able to do what I really, some of the things that I want to do. So therefore, the amount of money that I'll need in order to do that I need to be generating, constantly is different from a lot of people. And so I must plan for that. So that's the first thing that you need to do. Look at those two questions and answer those. Like literally sit down and write out those two questions before you move on to the next steps that I'm about to tell you. Do you guys remember those instructional tapes or whatever when it says pause here, and go do that activity? That's what I want to tell you to do right now. Don't listen to the rest of this podcast until you answer those questions, because you're going to get excited and you're going to move on to the next step. But, y'all grown. I can't tell you what to do. So anyway, after getting some detailed answers to the two questions that I asked earlier, now it's time for us to put some real action to it. And this is the exciting part, especially for me, because I love to see the numbers and I like to have an idea of where I need to be. There is a book called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And I love that book because he talks about a lot of things, actually. I recommend it for everyone to read. It's really a great book. Even if you're not into business or entrepreneurship, it's still a really good book to read. But in it, anyway, he talks about a certain concept called Dreamlining. And I've used this concept to help me to calculate my financial goal for lifestyle design. And I'm going to teach you how to do it too. All right, so basically, this dreamlining process applies timelines to what most people would consider dreams. And I love this concept because of the timeline that he uses. This might be surprising to you, but I really don't like to do long-term planning. There's too many variables that change too much. And for most people, long-term, in the future goals end up being excuses for postponing action. One day I'm going to do this, or in 5 years I plan on. And we often think we have a lot of time to do things, but we really don't. And before you know it, the time has come and gone. So for me, I usually plan up to a year. And basically that's it. Because I have my primary aim, I don't have to do 5-year plans, 10-year plans. I can plan year to year and have my primary aim as a gauge to know, am I on track to accomplishing my main life goal? You'll be surprised at what all you can accomplish and what all can happen in a year. So I just like to keep it on a year-to-year basis. And this concept of dreamlining pretty much does the same thing. He actually has a 6-month goal or a timeline and then a 12-month timeline. And so you can either choose both or you can choose either or. Now, he puts the dreams into 3 different categories. A having category, a being category, and a doing category. The having is, what are some things that you would like to have? Being, who would you like to be? And doing, what are some things that you would like to do? And I pretty much kind of set all my goals according to these categories as well. If you go back to the episode where I talk about the goals, I feel like there are 5 different goals that you should have. And then you want to just place those goals within these 3 different categories. After you come up with your list, then you need to determine the cost of each thing on the list. Now, some of them will have 0. So for instance, one of my goals was to learn how to do a handstand. It doesn't cost me any money because I can put in a YouTube video and practice, once or twice a week. And so that doesn't require any money. But you just want to go through the list and calculate how much each thing costs. And when you do it, instead of the grand total, you want to look at it on a monthly basis. So how much will it cost each month? Tim Ferriss's concept challenges or suggests that you look at money in a different way. So instead of the grand totals of things, think of income and expenses in terms of monthly cash flow. So how much money do you need to generate in a month to have the type of lifestyle that you want? Again, there are so many different variables that can change so often. I think that it's better doing it this way because you're able to, if something comes up, you're able to change things around instead of this one big amount grand total at the end of I'll need $1.2 million at the end of my lifetime, when there are so many things that can happen that will require you to have more or less. And so thinking about it on a monthly basis, I think serves you so much better than the whole grand total, what amount in one lifetime that you'll need. So for that house that you want, you may look at how much it costs, but do the research and see what would your mortgage payments look like on a monthly basis for the amount of time that you want to be able to pay it off. One of my day-to-day things that I want my life to look like on a day-to-day basis includes a personal chef. Your girl's got to have a personal chef because I can't stay in shape and cook and be this business mogul that I want to be and cook and clean too. I don't want to do it. So when I was researching how much it costs to have a personal chef in a month's time, it's really not that much. It's really not that much. You'll be surprised once you start researching things that they often cost much less than you would expect. You can find a real nice 10-day trip to Paris on Groupon. I'm telling y'all, research it. All inclusive, the flight and everything. So start to look at all those things. You may want to take a trip or two next year. Start to think, what's the amount total for everything, the flight, the hotel, and all of that. And then break it down into how much would you need to have monthly in order to have that general or grand total amount at the end. Now, after you've done that for each and every single thing on your list, then we do the calculations. All right, here we go. You're going to calculate the total of each of the items on your list. So, in the A category, or not A category, in the category with the having, in the category with the being, in the category with the doing, you're going to add all three of those up and you'll have one big number. So for instance, if your having comes up to $100, if your being comes up to $100, and your doing comes up to $100, the number at the end will be $300. Next, you want to calculate your total monthly expenses and multiply it by 0.3. Now, 0.3 just represents a buffer for savings or a rainy day fund. You can feel free to change this number based on the amount that makes you feel most comfortable, but it's important, very important, that you include a buffer because it just eliminates you not being prepared for those inevitable challenges that life brings, the layoffs or, the flat tires or any kind of unexpected expenses. You also want to have it just so that you don't feel guilty about enjoying life. I know a lot of times you don't have no money in the bank and you go on a vacation. You're on vacation, but you're worried about what you're going to do when you get back. It just eliminates all that. You can make sure you have money set aside for anything that happens unexpected. You just want to have that buffer in place. The third thing is you want to add up the grand total of the two. So your monthly expenses multiplied by 0.3 or whatever percentage that you choose. And then also the total of those three different categories. The grand total of the two is your target monthly income. That's the amount of money that you want to generate for that specific time frame, whether it's 6 months or a year, whatever your plan is. That's the amount of money you want to be generating on a monthly basis. Now, this amount may surprise you. For me, it was a lot less than what I expected. And even if it's intimidating for you, even if it's like way more than you thought, don't worry. At least now you have an idea of what it will take to get you living the type of life that you want to live. And I am begging you, listen to me carefully. Do not change the things on this list so that you are more comfortable with that grand total number. I always say never change the goal, change the plan. It's also very important to know that most times the numbers often change as time goes by because you'll be putting a lot less things on that having list and doing and putting a lot more on the doing list. So those once in a lifetime things that you want to do instead of those big purchases like a house or whatnot that costs a lot of money. Now that you have your target monthly income, it's just a matter of freeing up time to do the things on the list and generating the money to be able to do it. And I'm sure your brain is already thinking about ways you can generate money because that's the way it's designed. When I saw the number, I'm like, oh, how can I make that? I already make this. What do I need to add to that? How can I do all this other stuff? That's completely normal and that's a great thing. That's how you know that you're on the right track. Now, it's also okay if your mind just went, I'll never be able to generate that money. It's okay. It just means you might need to go back and listen to a couple episodes before this one. Nah, for real. It's okay because next week I'm going to be talking about ways to generate more funds so that you'll be able to do the things that you love. This is what lifestyle design is all about. So I'm excited about next week's show because I believe that a lot of you will be very surprised at how easy it is to generate more money. All right, you guys, that is all I have for you. Now, if any of the calculations seemed crazy, I got you. You know I'm always looking out for you. I always hook you up. Tim Ferriss has a worksheet that he designed to make that a lot easier than me trying to explain it to you. So I have the link in the show notes. All you have to do is click the link and you'll be able to put all your things in your categories and calculate everything. It's really a great worksheet. I was going to try to design one, but his works, so why fix what's not broken? Anywho, if you have any other questions, you know I'm always here. Reach out, hit me up, let me know. I will help you in any way possible. All right, guys, I love you, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.